Hello everyone and welcome to this webinar. My name is Peter Felsted, and as the editor of Jane's Events Weekly, I'll be chairing the event today, which draws substantially from material gathered by the JDW team in producing our 2018 Annual Defence Report. Those of you perhaps not familiar with the report should take a look in the 12th of December issue of the magazine, where you'll see that the ADR, the mother of all JDW features, pretty much occupies most of the magazine. It's really our take on most salient points in the world of defence throughout 2018 and what these might mean for the year ahead.
A lot happened within the U.S. over the past year, so a little run through of a few points that I'll be talking about. One is the evolving U.S. strategy. Then I'll touch a little bit on a Pentagon budget update, and then some major modernization programs and some movement on that over the past year. On the evolving Pentagon strategy, as Pete had mentioned at the start of the year, Secretary Mattis released the National Defense Strategy that called for sort of a pivot away from counterinsurgency operations towards large-scale operations with Russia and China. There was a variety of ways listed in there to help prepare for this, including a heavy reliance on allies and partners. And one way that the U.S. is trying to go about that is through shoring up foreign military sales. So a little bit on the Pentagon budget update. The Pentagon had been operating, as much as the government, on continuing resolution after continuing resolution, with the money not coming through. And it also had been operating under budget caps, something called sequestration. What happened this year is that Congress sort of struck a deal to lift the budget caps. So for fiscal year 2018, national defense was sort of funded at a $700 billion level. For FY19, it moved up to $716 billion. However, caps are set to return in 2020 unless Congress strikes another deal to lift these caps. The situation could be a bit more challenging with Democrats set to take control of the House of Representatives next year in January. What this means for the House is that Democrats will now control the House Armed Services Committee, the House Appropriations Committee, the Budget Committee. So with the National Defense Strategy sort of laying the groundwork for moving forward on modernization programs, several things happened this year. The Army continued its march forward with its 6 key modernization programs or efforts. In the order of importance to the Army is long-range precision fires, next-generation combat vehicle, future vertical lift, networking, air and missile defense, and soldier lethality. Under these 6 priorities, there's multiple different programs in different stages right now.
Due to time restraints, I'll be focusing on just a few of the aspects mentioned in this year's Annual Defense Report, namely some of the platforms and weapon systems being developed and or acquired by China, India, South Korea, and Japan. I'll also be taking a look at some of the latest developments in the conflict in Afghanistan. But first, I would like to speak about developments regarding North Korea, which made international headlines this year. Following Pyongyang's testing of an array of ballistic missiles in 2017, one of the top developments in the Asia-Pacific this year was arguably the de-escalation of tensions on the Korean Peninsula as a result of negotiations between Seoul, Washington, and Pyongyang, which are aimed at persuading North Korea to give up its nuclear weapons program. Pyongyang formally announced its intention to discuss the issue of denuclearization in March. This was followed by a summit held in April between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and South Korean President Moon Jae-in, during which they vowed to completely cease all hostile acts against each other in every domain and transform the Korean demilitarized zone into a peace zone. In June, Kim met with U.S. President Donald Trump in Singapore, reaffirming his commitment to completing the denuclearization of the peninsula. In 2018, South Korea continued to further its military capabilities by procuring advanced foreign equipment and increasingly developing its own weapon systems and platforms. For instance, in February, the Republic of Korean Navy received its first FFX-2 guided missile frigate, and in March, the first of 40 F-35As ordered in 2014 was rolled out in the U.S., with the first aircraft expected to arrive in South Korea next year. In May, South Korea launched Marado, the second Dokdo-class helicopter carrier, and in August, the service issued a tender for a research project to explore the possibility of operating F-35Bs. This year, China continued efforts to enhance the capabilities of all service of the People's Liberation Army. In terms of the PLA Navy, a number of vessels were launched, including 3 more Type 55 destroyers, the first stretch variant of the Type 52D destroyer class, the 9th Dongdiao class intelligence collection ship, and the 4th and 5th Type 71 amphibious landing ships. It also seems that 2 more Type 94 class nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarines were launched during the past 12 months, bringing the Navy's inventory of this type to 6. Moreover, additional Type 56 class corvettes, Type 52 class destroyers, and Type 54A class frigates, as well as another acoustic surveillance ship and several air-cushioned landing craft were launched or commissioned this year. Moreover, China's second aircraft carrier began sea trials in May, and in late November, Beijing confirmed that construction of the third carrier had begun. Moving on to China's neighbor, India, the country continued to modernize its armed forces through the acquisition of mostly Russian, U.S., and Israeli-made equipment. One of the most important deals New Delhi signed this year was in October for the acquisition of 5 Russian-built S-400 Triumph air defense systems. That same month, New Delhi signed a contract for the supply of 2 Russian-built Admiral Grigorovich frigates, and a month later signed another one to license-build 2 more ships of the class. Also in October, state-owned Hindustan Aeronautics Limited signed a contract with Israel's IAI for 83 AESA raiders and an equal number of electronic warfare suites to be fitted onto the Mark 1A variant of the Tejas light combat aircraft.
The United States has threatened sanctions against countries buying Russian weapons like the S-400. What are the potential implications of this? And of course, most obviously, we're talking about India and Turkey here, aren't we? Because India are wary of the potential sanctions against them, but have still pressed ahead to buy the S-400 because they know they need that to maintain an even stance vis-a-vis China. And also with Turkey, that's a very tricky one because we have F-35s, Turkish F-35s delivered to the Turks, but in the United States. But there are due to be next year F-35 deliveries to Turkey, which of course is a part of that program, and yet US congressmen are threatening to withhold those deliveries to a key member of that international partnership over S-400 acquisitions and acquisitions of other Russian equipment. So what happens with all of that?
Well, I think you summed it up perfectly. So you're 100% correct, and this a lot goes back to the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act. However, in fiscal year, I think it was the fiscal year 19 Defense Authorization Bill, lawmakers did add a provision, sort of a waiver provision, for allies and partners who indicate that they want to move away from Russian equipment and towards U.S. equipment. But what that means for India and Turkey is a big question mark. I'm hearing from the State Department that they've sort of warned Turkey and India and other countries do not expect this waiver. It's not a guarantee of anything. But at the same time, the U.S. has really been trying to shore up its relationship with India. It's been a bit trickier with Turkey, and with the F-35 and the S-400 both slated to go deploy into Turkey next year, it's a big question mark.